Retourne la réunion à 8h03. Adoption de l'ordre du jour.
Que l'ordre du jour soit adopté tel que présenté.
Secondé. Madame Chouanière. Ajout. OK. Tout le monde en faveur? Merci. Déclaration d'intérêt pécuniaire? Aucune. Délégation présentation. Service de police dans Clarence Rockland. Good day, gentlemen. Oh, no, police, we said, not fire chief.
We're all one big happy family.
If you say so.
I'm going to hand this out. This is a comparison chart. It's in the presentation, the PowerPoint that's on your slides, but it may be a little hard to see. So this is an English version. I apologize. You guys have that? Do you want to? Yes, sir. So the purpose of tonight's presentation and discussion, and I've asked members of our OPP service to be here tonight to answer questions that council may have that I may not be able to answer for you, but was really to approach you as the Director of Protective Services and address some of the challenges that we face from a bylaw enforcement perspective and look at some options and sort of how the policing world works between the two. So I've put together a short PowerPoint to just sort of give you an overview of policing and law enforcement in general in Canada with a Clarence Rockland perspective. And we can talk about some options and talk about some different ideas, and certainly both the Municipal Policing Bureau member from Aurelia is here, as well as our detachment commander is here. So if there are questions of the OPP, they may be able to answer them tonight. They may have to get back to you on them, but certainly they're here to answer your questions and provide counsel with some clarification. So law enforcement in our province is really addressed at a federal level by the RCMP, so they don't have a big presence, but they are here doing some federal enforcement. We have our OPP dealing with provincial matters as well as contract and non-contract policing across the province, and that's how we have them in Clarence Rockland. Some municipalities elect to establish a municipal police service under the Police Services Act, and where police services are not provided by a municipality, they are by default provided by the Ontario Provincial Police, or could be provided through another service through a contract, as the case may be. And then underneath all of that, sort of addressing our municipal bylaws, are our municipal law enforcement officers who are appointed under the authority of the Police Services Act. So this is the section in the Police Services Act that says it's every municipality's responsibility to provide adequate policing services in accordance with its needs, and they have to include a whole bunch of services. So I've heard discussion, and I don't remember if it was from specific councillors or members of the public asking, could we establish our own municipal police service? You could. That's an option for council. That's an option that you could choose to consider. The reality is that when you look at all of the different services that have to be provided, it would be very costly. So to try and provide all of the different services, having an emergency response capacity, a public order capacity, in addition to law and crime prevention and all of the non-uniform roles that go into a police service, it would be very, very expensive for a small municipality to take on, but it is an option for council. So we have some options as the City of Clarence Rockland in terms of how we deal with that. We can establish our own police service, as we mentioned, or we can enter into an agreement. So there are options there. You could establish a joint police service. There are areas across the province that have done that. You could contract police services from another force, so the option would be we could explore with Ottawa if there was interest there. I don't know. In the past, that has not been something that they've wanted to look at, but you never know. We can choose to enter into a contract or negotiate a contract with the OPP to provide contracted police services. Or under section 5.1, it says if we don't establish a police service, if as Clarence Rockland we don't have a police service, the OPP shall provide the police service to the municipality. So that's where we are today. So Clarence Rockland does not have a police service. As a result, police services are provided by the OPP under this section of the Act. And when you look at your chart in front of you, you're going to see the two columns. One is with a contract and one is non-contract, and you'll see that section number at the top. That's how we get there. That section carries on and provides that basically any cost for that policing is due payable to the Ministry of Finance. They basically tell our treasurer what that cost is gonna be, and that's what the cost is. There's a big, some of the previous council may recall there's a big, long, complicated formula in terms of how that gets explained. If you're curious on that, I would defer to our colleagues to try and explain that to you. But the basic premise is a base service cost and then a cost for calls per service. So if you're a really busy municipality, your costs are a little bit higher. If you're a slower municipality, your costs are lower.
But at one time, I know contract was a lot more expensive. Now, has that changed, or?
Yes. So to answer your question, Mr. Mayor, the costing for going into a contract service versus a non-contract with the OPP, your costs are almost identical. There is a slight difference. If you decide to go into a contract with the OPP, we have to establish a police services board. In a municipality of our size, that's 3 members. Their remuneration is stipulated under the Police Services Act. Each one's entitled, it's in my slide here, I think it's $300 a year. So it's not a big cost difference, but understand that that's based on the same service level that you have today in terms of policing. So you could ask for additional services or enhanced FTEs if you wanted additional traffic enforcement, or you want a community liaison officer, or what do they call them, school safety officer? School resource officer. So there are different options that council could choose to say, hey, I'd really like to enhance traffic enforcement. So if you wanted to do that, there's an additional cost for additional officers to provide that service. If you kept the service essentially the same as it is today, your contract cost and your non-contract cost are essentially the same, with the addition of the Police Services Board and whatever remuneration is established for those 3 members.
But even if we had the contract now, we still don't have any officers stopping trucks, let's say overload during half load and all this, do we? So that's a question in terms of how we want to address some of our municipal bylaws and our heavy truck routes and how we want to deal with that. Typically, so if you looked at a contract to police service, and Hawkesbury would be an example of that, they've contracted the OPP and established in their agreement that they want the OPP to be able to enforce some of their municipal bylaws. Again, to my understanding, and my colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong, they don't have dedicated officers assigned to municipal law enforcement, to bylaw enforcement, but they have the capability to enforce municipal bylaws if the need arose. But this used to be a service offered by bylaw officers, and that was switched over to OPP.
So my understanding is that Hawkesbury still employs municipal bylaw officers that cover the bulk of stuff, but if there was an after hours call or something, a noise complaint as an example, a Hawkesbury detachment member could issue a ticket.
Yeah, but I'm talking about half load, overload trucks.
Correct.
It's still OPP that has to do that, or I don't think we have permission to give, bylaw has permission of getting tickets.
So the biggest, and that's, Mr. Mayor, I'm glad you brought it up, because really that's the point of the discussion tonight, is a question of how do we get the vehicle stopped to issue the ticket in the first place. So we've passed a number of municipal bylaws within the city of Clarence-Rockland, some long before this council or the previous. The challenge is, with some of those issues, how do we stop the truck? So under the Highway Traffic Act, a municipal bylaw officer has no authority to stop the truck, which is where we're running into our inherent problem. We can't flag that truck over to stop it. You need a police officer to do that. So there have been joint initiatives in the past where our bylaw staff would work with a police officer, and the police officer could stop the truck, and then we could say, hey, you're not supposed to be on this road, and issue a ticket. It's just, it has to become a joint venture because we don't have the authority to stop the truck. Another example would be our snowmobile bylaw. So we've got a motorized snow vehicle bylaw. It says you can't drive a snowmobile on the sidewalk. We don't have the authority to stop the snowmobile. So there is a Motorized Snow Vehicles Act in the province that says only certain people have the authority to stop a snowmobile or to signal to the driver of a snowmobile to stop. We don't have that authority, which is sort of why we're having this discussion tonight. Just more for council's information and education than anything, but like I say, there's some options if you wanted to go down that road in terms of how we could look at that.
Can some of those authorities be delegated to the bylaws?
Possibly. And so I'm going to get to that in sort of the tail end of this presentation. It's a question, because I don't believe it's been done in Ontario. No. It looks like it might be possible under the legislation, but we would be forging a new path.
How about we let him finish his whole presentation? I think some questions are going to get answered too. So.
They're good questions, though.
Yeah.
So we have the OPP here. The OPP provide
policing services to our municipality without an OPP contract. What that means under the Police Services Act is that they can establish a Community Policing Advisory Committee, or CPAC Advisory Committee, which the mayor typically sits on and sometimes sends me, to go and have discussions with the detachment commander. So we have Acting Inspector Duval here, and the municipalities in the region covered under Russell County that do not have policing contracts participate in the CPAC advisory. So we go and sit down, and I think there's 3 municipalities that sit down and have regular discussions with the detachment commander and sort of say these are issues that are raising their head in our area. Speeding through the villages, or traffic along 17, or whatever the issue of the day is, we can certainly provide that guidance or that feedback back to the detachment commander, who can then try and prioritize resources to deal with it. And if nothing else, those advisory committees give us the opportunity to network with our detachment commander, which is then pivotal when we run into major situations like, say, the flood of 2017. So because we've established those relationships, because the detachment commander and I have the chance to network on a somewhat regular basis, we have that built up rapport, that built up relationship that we can then leverage for help when we need it. If you decided to go with an OPP contract, so if council said, hey, I'm interested in looking at going into an OPP contract, we would have to establish a police services board, which I mentioned earlier, and the persons that are on that board are established under the Police Services Act. So it would be the mayor or an appointed member of council, 1 member appointed from the community, and 1 member appointed by the Lieutenant Governor and Council. Those would be the 3 members that would form the Police Services Board representing the City of Clarence-Rockland. And they have to be, according to that act, compensated at least $300 a year. So that's your additional expense. $900 a year as a minimum. I guess council could choose to establish a different remuneration package, but that's the minimum established in the Police Services Act. So currently, and Inspector Duval can correct me if I'm wrong, but currently in Clarence-Rockland, we're provided police services under Section 5.1, which is non-contract. We have 20 sworn officers that work out of the Rockland detachment, sub-detachment, however we're calling this, part of the group. We have 4 shifts of 4 members, plus some non-uniform staff and a staff sergeant working out of there now. Out of Russell, okay. There's and council will remember last year we converted the admin to a full-time role. So there's a full-time admin person in there. There are 2 auxiliary or volunteer officers that work out of that office, and the main detachment's down in Ombra. So this is where you see the chart. So there's a whole bunch of information in this chart. I don't know, did you guys want, please? You're good? Anyone else want one? You're going to look at it. The IT guy's going to refer to his IT device. Perfect. Dave? Okay, all right, very good. So the biggest things that I would point out into this, there's a lot of information in this table. The big things really are to sort of understand how the governance model works. There's information on how the detachment commander is selected and evaluated. There's talks of the complaint system and how that stuff runs through. The item to me that's really important is when you look at item 10 that talks about bylaw enforcement. So in a contract model, you could specify that there is a component of bylaw enforcement that you want as part of your contract. That's negotiated with the OPP. The reality is they have a number of sort of standard language contracts, so there's going to be sort of some standard language in there. To try and get something really abstract may be a challenge, but the standard language may provide for some options for that. Without a contract, the Police Services Act says that the OPP have no responsibility for municipal bylaws, but as I'm told, there certainly could be some discussion with the detachment commander if there were particular things that were a priority, such as half loads. That could be something that we could have some discussion on with the detachment commander and try and work out some agreement, just to understand that we have limited resources to be able to try and deal with some of those things. Does that make sense? Any questions on this sort of comparison between the two?
Well, it's just a comment really, is that years ago, there was a big difference between contract and non-contract. And I remember that's why we didn't go in contract. They were adding a car, officer, the whole works, even the gun and everything else was added on the bill itself. So that's why the council had turned away from contract. But if the price is the same, I don't see a problem there. Madame Chouanière?
When you said that some agreement can be done on some specific issues, that would, it's not the same as a contract. Contract means that we full services from the OPP. So an agreement would be with the non-contract, but on very specific things we could, if the resources, human resources are available, then we could.
Yeah, so it's important for council to know that in both models, really, a municipal bylaw enforcement issue or call is a billable call. So that's billable to us above and beyond what's normally included.
Okay.
So if we wanted them to handle a whole slew of bylaw issues for the city, we would expect to receive an invoice for a number of billable calls for time put towards those tasks. Is that fair?
Does the contract come with a new building?
We can have a separate discussion.
The short answer is no.
Where's
So-
it now?
What's that? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I understand the whole contract thing. The system we have now, what we have now as a service, are there minimum requirements of the OPP to service Clarence Rockland? The reason I ask is because we've seen a number of instances where we've had a major accident on the highway and the OPP, I guess they called you or whatever, and they said, we can't send officers to do traffic control because we don't have anybody on. So are there minimum requirements, and are we getting those minimum requirements under what we're paying right now?
Okay. I don't know if I can answer if there's a statutory minimum or something established. From a health and safety perspective, and again, I would ask my colleagues to correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly they would never endeavor to have an officer working by themselves. So if you've got 4 shifts of 4, you've got 4 people on shift today. If one member was off sick, one member was on course, you're down to 2 officers. If for some reason you ended up shy of that, and I know in the past they've had to shuffle officers around, including from other jurisdictions, other counties, in order to maintain, and again, we would never put an officer on by themselves. We'd make sure that they had a partner. Is that fair? During the night. Okay. So they do their best to make sure that that we're never down to a single officer. There could be extreme situations where that happens. The challenge in policing is, and again, I'm not a police officer, so I don't want to speak for them, but the challenge is really when you run into multiple calls for service happening at a simultaneous time. So take bad weather as an example, and you've got multiple vehicle collisions going on. There's a limited number of resources to try and handle those incidents. Someone has to investigate the collision. There's also the subsequent or the secondary issue of controlling traffic and trying to make sure that the scene is safe for responders that are there or working there. In Ottawa, there's a huge number of officers working any given day, and typically they can move officers around within their municipal jurisdiction. Once you start getting into the more rural areas of the province, the OPP are one of the largest policing organizations in North America, but they're spread across the entire province of Ontario. So if we had a major incident in Clarence Rockland, the OPP can bring a huge number of resources to bear on that. It's the travel time to get here.
Just to help further clarify, I think, there's no difference between a contract and a non-contract situation. We are, as the OPP legislative, required to provide adequate and effective policing services, and that's based right on the Police Services Act. And I think there was a slide on that. So the specific operational issue where perhaps that one day where we couldn't provide an officer, obviously I can't speak specifically to that because I don't have knowledge of the exact details of that. But the whole idea of service delivery within the OPP is the integrated service delivery model. So what you have is the whole service delivery is not FTE based for each municipality. We are legislatively required to provide adequate and effective policing services. When it comes to operational issues, the whole service delivery is designed to be flexible. We have officers that can work in many locations. They're not just, for example, if we need officers coming up from Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry for a specific incident, we have the ability to call those officers in for assistance. So it's built in that flexibility. But to speak, does that help kind of answer your question?
It does to a point. I guess a subsequent question to that would be, or comment, besides Hawkesbury, who else has in Glengarry, Prescott Russell, who has a contract with the OPP?
Nation does, Castleman? No,
No.
Castleman does not, Nation does.
Castleman and Ember.
CSE&G,
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure on that.
So,
Seven counties.
So, just
No,
to
Castleman and
just to
Ember
further that, you
have a
can,
conflict.
on our website, www.opp.ca, you actually can go in, there's a web page under, if you type in a search box, the search box that's on the main page, you type in municipal policing, that'll bring up the municipal policing page. And there's a number of links, I believe it is under the OPP building model link on the right side. If you click on that, there's actually a table where you can go in and click into all the municipalities that the OPP polices. And it's actually outlined on a neat little spreadsheet. And you can actually filter through and you can see which municipalities are section 10 versus which municipalities are section 5.1. You can actually see what each municipality is paying for per year. So that, to that question, Elise, you would be able to filter through the list and figure out within this area which municipalities are actually under contract with the OPP.
yeah, it's just I figure with a population of 26,000 residents, you know, even if you don't have a contract with the OPP, you would expect a minimum level of service that would protect 26,000 residents and serve 26,000 residents. So the last thing you want is to have a municipality say forced into a contract to get additional resources and to pay more because you're not getting the minimum. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's, I'm not saying that's what's happening. It's just that it's, you know, there's, when we're discussing these matters around budget time, you know, and we see the number that we have to pay into the OPP every year, which is fine, but when you see a lot of instances where we don't see, or we don't feel we have the appropriate level of servicing, that's when it gets concerning to residents and to council.
Yeah, and the message I could say is we don't force municipalities into contracts. It's
Well,
obviously
yeah,
simply their choice.
Forced by,
Yeah.
by choice.
By necessity,
Yeah,
or yeah,
exactly.
I can understand where you're going. So yeah, the idea is, it's not a two-tier system.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because you sign up for a contract, you're gonna get better service. The contract simply, and I think Mr. Wilson has really explained it well, and the contract gives you some options for example, for these enhanced positions. The key to remember too about enhanced positions, people will think, well, you know what, we'll sign into a contract, that way we can get more officers on the road to address those issues when those winter days come and we're short-staffed. You got to remember though, those positions, those enhanced positions are not designed to boost the front line. Again, we are legislatively required to provide the adequate and effective police service. Those enhanced positions are specifically to address specific roles.
Okay.
It's not designed to boost up your numbers because you want more cruisers on the road. It's designed to address this. We've got specific issues with traffic enforcement, where I want an officer full-time in the schools to address and liaise with our students. That's what it's designed for. So, you know, contract, non-contract, again, we're trying to level the playing field, and in essence, it's really the same thing that comes down.
Madam Sonia?
When we're talking about the minimum level of service of the OPP, like, is there a number of officers at all times that are within the limit of the city of Clarence Park?
That is more, it's,
Just
those
that
are,
way
okay.
it's easier for the camera. The
Yeah.
cameras can then give you this.
Got it. Sorry, can you just say that question again for me?
We're talking about the level of service.
Yes.
And is there, like, when we talk about the number of police officers that are at one time within the city of Clarence Rockland, do you have when you talk about the minimum level of service, does that mean that there will be at least one, you know, that would be always available within the boundaries of the city of Clarence Rockland?
I understand your question. So that the system, it's the billing model and the way we run our service. It's not based on FTEs. So for example.
Can you tell
if-
us what FTE is? So they-
Sorry, my apologies, full-time equivalent.
Thank you.
Okay, my apologies.
It's okay.
It's the lingo I get to work with day in and day out. So, you know, for example, say if Rockland decides to sign a contract, you don't sign a contract saying that you'll have 10 officers in the detachment at all time. You only have 2. The billing model doesn't work that way. The billing model is designed, yet again, I go back to this phrase, and it gets a little tiresome because you always hear it and then wonder what in the world it means, but it's designed to provide that adequate and effective service, meaning that you will have an officer. When you pay that, the base service, and then the calls for service, the base service basically is that it's almost like a guarantee. We have to provide that adequate and effective service so you have an officer available to respond as needed.
Yeah,
The
but-
number of officers, that is an operational decision.
Okay, so so what you're saying is there may not be any officers at some time, you know, in the city, but if there is a need, then you may request an officer who's somewhere else to come into the city.
Correct. It's designed, and again,
I find that for the amount of money that we pay, and not having at least one officer at all times within the boundaries, being the biggest city, to me this is unacceptable.
So,
Madame Joignière, c'est pas écrit dans un contrat nulle part, mais je vais vous assurer que jamais moins que 4 policiers qui travaillent dans la ville de Rockland de jour, de nuit. Et puis.
Dans Rockland, dans la cité de Clarence Rockland.
Pardon?
À Rockland,
Dans tout le
dans toute la
comté,
cité.
c'est une zone. Et puis, s'il y a quelqu'un qui appelle malade, on les remplace tout le temps. Je ne vous dis pas qu'il y en a 10, mais il y en a tout le temps au moins 4 de jour ou de nuit.
OK. À l'intérieur
Fait que-
de.
Oui,
OK,
fait
c'est
que
ce que je-
pensez pas qu'il n'y a pas personne qui travaille ou il y en a juste un. Ça arrive jamais parce que c'est une question opérationnelle et puis c'est pour la sécurité publique des gens qui demeurent ici. Fait que-
OK. J'avais besoin de cette assurance.
oui, c'est bien.
M. Grimard?
Je crois que la présentation de M. Wilson, on a une gap en ce moment dans notre municipalité. Si un appel nécessitant l'intervention d'un agent de réglementation, our bylaw officers finish at what time?
Right now, they finish at 8 if there's someone on. So we have a staff of 4 officers, one working early mornings till mid-afternoon, the other one starting late mornings and finishing at 8 at night.
So from 8 at night till 8 in the morning, Clarence Rockland doesn't have bylaw officers. So if a call comes in for a loud party or a disturbance that is bylaw related, they will help. I know they will. But when you have a contract, it means they can enforce all the bylaws that we have in our city. Not only it provides better service to our residents, but also it gives them more discretion. Instead of maybe writing a big fine, they can resort to a bylaw. Sometimes it really smooths situation. And I think it's the gap you're trying to address with this report is that, and I just want to add to Mr. Lalonde's comment, is that the security and the level of service by a contract, a PSA Section 10, it doesn't cost us a lot more, but it gives a lot more service to the community and a lot more response in case of certain calls past our bylaw times. It also gives us the RIDE program, Reduce Impaired Driving Enforcement. That's included in the contract. So there are a few things that we get if we get into a contract.
Yeah, but you
So-
said our cost to that for every bylaws, every type of bylaws.
No, if you're on a contract, you're good.
Sorry, and I should have introduced myself. My apologies. I'm Ken Key. I'm a sergeant at the Municipal Policing Bureau at headquarters in Orillia. So just to the point, though, I just want to clarify with RIDE programs, you get that either in a contract or non-contract location. For RIDE programs, that's included in the base service for any municipality.
According
There
to
are
their
options.
sheet, according to their sheet.
Yeah,
Okay.
and those are grants. So
Okay.
there are options. If you go into a contract, there is some extra money for producing RIDE programs. But I'm sure, and the inspector could clarify this, but we do RIDE regardless of whether we get grants or not in every municipality. I also want to make it very clear too with the whole bylaw question. If you have a contract with the OPP, yes, there is the assumption in there that we, based on an agreement between the municipality and the local OPP detachment to enforce certain bylaws, there's still that option in a non-contract location. You could still draw up some sort of agreement, so that option is there. So I just want to make that very clear. Don't consider that, well, we need the bylaw enforcement, therefore we have to enter into a contract. That's not the case at all. Just so that's understood. Thank you.
Autre question? OK.
Okay, sorry, so just a couple more slides. So and this is by no means a comprehensive list, but I wanted to give council some idea of some of the bylaws that we're running into some challenges enforcing currently. We've got our ATV bylaw passed in 2005, and again, some of the issues are we've established speed limits and stopping of ATVs within that bylaw, but we don't have the authority to enforce it. Same under the motorized snow vehicles bylaw, so we've got a similar issue there. We've got speed limits, where they can operate, where they can't operate. How do we enforce some of those things? The use and care of streets talks about stopping vehicles and where vehicles are allowed to be stopping. Our traffic and parking bylaw deals with our heavy truck routes and how we're going to deal with some of those issues, driving on closed roads, circumventing barricades, those kinds of issues. And then one of the other challenges that we're struggling with is just dealing with traffic control at motor vehicle collisions, particularly if our police resources are stretched due to other calls or other needs. So we're running into issues where we don't necessarily have authorities under certain pieces of provincial legislation to do options here. Contract or not may not resolve all of those issues, because if you still don't have resources, you still run into an issue. So Madame Chouinière had asked a question about what are some of the options and what could we look at. We could leave it as is and acknowledge that some of the bylaws may be a challenge enforcing. We can repeal some unenforceable bylaws or sections of. We could look at contracting the OPP to provide some stopgap measures with components, or enter into a separate agreement with the OPP to try and do something along those lines. Your last option, which again I mentioned this earlier, your question, Councillor, was could we get the authority for the bylaw officers? And the answer to that is I don't know. There are some examples in Ontario where under the Police Services Act, there is a provision that allows for the creation of special constables. Special constables under the Act basically are given police authority within the very tight confines of that appointment. So an example of that that's probably most prevalent to us would be OC Transpo. So OC Transpo has special constables that are given police-like authority within the special confines of that, which in the most part is to deal with OC Transpo property. There are a couple of examples where special constables are used in the broader context, so you see them on university campuses such as Carleton, and there are some sort of unique special circumstances like Niagara Parks Police, which are special constables appointed for the enforcement of certain legislation in the Niagara Parks region, so right around Niagara Falls. There are some options to look at that, and the Police Services Act allows for an option to look at that. So if council wanted to explore that, again, this is, I'll call it, and correct me if I'm wrong, gents, I would call this uncharted territory in Ontario. There are examples in other provinces in Canada that are doing something similar to that, but it's not commonplace in Ontario to do what I'm talking about right now. So there is an option to try and look at that. There's two ways that you can get special constables under the Act if that was a decision of council. If you had a contract with the OPP, you therefore have a police services board. And so one option would be your police services board can choose to appoint special constables for a certain appointment. That then has to go to the Solicitor General for the Solicitor General's approval. Your other option without a contract is that you need to get the OPP Commissioner's approval for your special constables, and then that goes to the Solicitor General for approval. So either way, the Solicitor General has to sign off on what you're proposing to do. On the one hand, you get the OPP Commissioner to do it. On the other hand, you get a Police Services Board to try and initiate it. There's still a question mark as to whether or not the Solicitor General would approve with whatever that intention was, but it might be possible. There is an option in the Police Services Act that you could look at that. And so I put in my presentation some examples of special constables in Ontario. So we mentioned public transit, such as OC Transpo, Toronto Transit, Metrolinx. There are a number of university campuses. The closest to us would be Carleton. You see some community housing examples, Toronto being one of those where they're using special constables to have police-like authority within a community housing complex. And then you've got port security and transport. OPP use special constables for those capacities, and they have certain authority. There are government security agencies such as the Parliamentary Protective Service, or PPS, that you see on the Hill in Ottawa. Those are special constables, as well as sort of the one exemption to the common rule, which is Niagara Parks Police. And although they're given the title of police, that was, from what I can gather, established because they've been around since forever. When the falls started flowing, they were around, so they've been sort of grandfathered in and allowed to continue with that title. Most common, you'll see this model used in other provinces. So Alberta's been using a multi-tiered law enforcement model where they have community peace officers doing certain components. They have a more traditional bylaw officer, then they have an officer that does some traffic responsibilities. Both of those are unarmed positions. And then you move into police constables, either RCMP or municipal policing. Saskatchewan started down that road with community safety officers, and I have a little bit of experience with that when I was in Saskatchewan, which is why I was curious about seeing if this is something that council's interested in venturing down or not. That's really what the purpose of this presentation was to talk about.
I would be curious to find out, I don't know if there are some stats already done on that, but how many municipalities, small municipalities, go with constable before they go with a full contract with the OPP? Is it like a good transition between going completely with the OPP, with their contract, or going with their constable?
With special constables?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe anyone in Ontario is using special constables for what we're talking about right now. I don't think it's happening anywhere in Ontario. It seems to be that it's possible in the legislation, but I'm not aware of an example of it happening in Ontario.
And what about the rest of Canada?
Saskatchewan and Alberta have examples of that running today. I was part of that in North Battleford when I was out there, but again, it's a different province, different provincial legislation.
It's something that was brought up when we went to a few conferences when the Liberals were there, but now it seems to be.
Yeah, but otherwise, you said that
gone.
otherwise also using them for.
Within very special contexts, so just their transit. So OC Transpo has special constables to deal with enforcement matters on their OC Transpo buses and trains.
So would you recommend that? Like, would you say that it would be a good solution, or it's not, like, or it's very limited with the kind of services that it could do?
Well, it'd be an extra cost too, wouldn't it?
Well, it's hard for me to say. I guess really what I wanted to do was bring to council the issue that we have some challenges with some of the municipal bylaws that we have in place today, and with our ability to direct traffic. So I know there's been lots of questions raised in the past, can I get bylaw to go direct traffic for this bike race or this parade or this whatever? And the challenge is we have no statutory authority under the Highway Traffic Act to direct traffic. We're good-natured people, and in the past we've gone out and done our best to try and help the community out or help a special event out. But if there was ever an incident out of a bylaw officer trying to direct traffic, there's a huge amount of liability assumed there. We have no authority to stand there and try and direct traffic. And so that's one of the challenges with directing traffic, and we're trying to find a way to address some of council's wishes and what seem to be council's priorities, but we don't have the authority to do it. We can either contract or try and negotiate with the OPP to try and get some of those things done. They are equally strapped for resources. The nice thing about trying to pursue special constables, and the reason I think you're seeing it in Alberta and Saskatchewan, is that they're a municipal, they could be, depending on how it gets set up, and we don't know because it's not yet done in Ontario. But I can give you the example from North Battleford, Saskatchewan, where we basically took our bylaw officers and went through a number of different hoops to create them as special constables, and they were then a municipal resource that could do certain things to help with council's priorities of the day, whether it be half loads, whether it be whatever. So you have some nice options there, but again, it's uncharted territory in Ontario.
Should we cut that in?
In regards to, right now we're under a non-contract. Do we have any side agreements, like you've mentioned, that there's a possibility of doing? Are there any, that, to your knowledge, that we have in place right now? It's just strictly perfect. So that's a no?
None today. There's no agreements in place today.
Okay. Just for my personal knowledge, just curious about it.
I guess just to provide some context to that, we have an excellent working relationship with our local OPP detachment, the OPP commander, as well as the staff on the road working out of Rockland. So when there are issues, for example, a loud noise at a party, we can act on what the police officers deal with after hours. So if they go to that loud party and they tell them, you guys got to shut this down, if the officers provide our bylaw staff with the details of that incident as what's known as a will say, and basically saying, if I go to court, this is what I'm going to say, our officers can then act on that and still prosecute under a municipal bylaw based on the evidence that were given by the OPP officer that attended. That happens sometimes. It's not very common, but it does happen from time to time. And that's, I guess, a testament to the working relationship that we have with the OPP today. We're trying to find ways to make it work as best we can.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your patience, being here for a while. Good drive back to Aurelia.
Thank you.
OK? Correspondance n'a pas avis de motion. Période de questions. Si quelqu'un qui a des questions, c'est le temps de le faire. OK? Aucune. Rapport du Conseil des unis. Vous savez que le budget est passé. J'ai voté contre. Parce que 3,8 c'était trop haut. Et puis pour la résidence, mon argument est encore que la résidence ne devrait pas piger dans le budget opérationnel pour payer la construction plus tard. Ça devrait être un budget capital. Ça fait près de 5 millions qui ont pris comme c'est là. Si on n'avait pas pris 5 millions-là, je suis certain qu'on n'aurait pas besoin de monter les taxes de 3,8
Et nous demandez pas 11,7 millions.
Et voilà.
On ne fera pas l'année.
Non, on n'ira pas là. Mais il y a d'autres items qui s'en viennent, ça devrait être intéressant. Prochaine. Rapport comité demande de Pierre Lafontaine pour une exception au règlement sur les clôtures pour 25 Clarence Court.
Monsieur le maire.
Monsieur le maire. La question?
Monsieur le maire.
Ça a déjà
Je
passé.
Passé.
Ah.
Monsieur le maire. Étant donné que M. Irwin est ici strictement pour le 9.4, peut-être qu'on peut passer 9.4 en premier, puis après ça, lui, il va être capable de s'en retourner chez eux et sa famille. Juste une suggestion.
Ben, on peut passer juste 9.1, on ira pour 9.4 après. Là.
OK.
C'est pas long, ça, je pense. Là. Monsieur Bouchard?
Que le comité plénière recommande que le Conseil approuve la demande de dérogation au règlement 2016-96 sur les clôtures, article 5.1 permettant une clôture d'être plus haut que 1 mètre à l'avant de la cour visant Pierre Lafontaine au 25 Clarence Court.
Secondé. Monsieur Lalonde? Question? Oui, M. Grimard.
Je sais que le rapport dit que c'est correct, qu'il n'y a pas de... Mais
C'est une chicane de voisins.
c'est ça, c'est que là, on est en train de déroger d'un règlement pour un conflit de voisins que je suis sûr que ça doit être très difficile parce que là, quand on... Alors, je questionne le conseil en même temps. Là. Est-ce qu'on ne rentre pas dans un terrain un peu glissant que dès que peut-être qu'il va y avoir des désaccords, on va regarder à régler ça avec une dérogation d'un règlement municipal qui est efficace, qui fonctionne, pour régler une situation. Je sais que c'est pas le fun, là, une chicane de voisins. Peut-être que celle-là, on va dire oui, mais est-ce qu'on n'ouvre pas la porte à ce qu'il y ait d'autres situations qui nous arrivent et qui demandent une dérogation du règlement pour essayer de régler une situation? Est-ce qu'une clôture va régler tout? C'est un petit peu la question que je me pose.
Madame Chagnon?
On a refusé dans de termes précédents. On avait eu au moins 2 demandes, certains. Et puis, on avait dit qu'on ne s'en mêlait pas parce que c'est trop délicat. Puis, ça créerait un précédent.
Autre question?
Bref, moi, écoute, je suis allé visiter M. Lafontaine, j'ai regardé la situation aussi, puis j'ai lu attentivement le règlement aussi sur les clôtures. Et quand que tu regardes un peu l'esprit du règlement, qu'est-ce qu'il y en est, on parle surtout en termes de look, d'obstruction, de genre de ville, est-ce qu'on veut avoir aussi en même temps. Dans leur situation spécifique, géographiquement parlant, où ce qu'ils sont, dans un cul-de-sac total, où ce que c'est tous des terrains un peu en pointe de tarte tel quel, à une clôture qui est en endroit comme ça, il n'y a aucune obstruction d'un voisin à un autre, puis il n'y a pas un problème visuel qui vient avec. Donc, d'un point de vue urbaniste, qui est l'esprit de ce règlement-là, il n'y a rien vraiment qui vient contre ce règlement-là. C'est certain que dans le village Morris, dans une même situation, dans un quartier tout le monde rocher, tu ne pourrais jamais même penser avoir une situation comme ça parce que, regarde, ça ne va juste pas avec l'esprit du règlement. Dans ce cas-ci, par contre, je pense que surtout si vous auriez le visuel de où ce que c'est, déjà que l'hiver, c'est la grosse montagne de neige qui est mise là de toute façon. Okay? Donc, ils ont une clôture là l'hiver qui est faite avec la neige qui est là. Les voisins autour sont tous d'accord aussi que c'est pas un problème. Fait que c'est une situation où ce que l'esprit du règlement, je pense qu'il est respecté, puis les voisins qui sont là sont tous en accord aussi avec. Fait que moi, je vois pas de problème dans ce cas particulier qui respecte l'esprit du règlement.
M. Lalonde?
Je suis d'accord avec M. Bouchard dans l'optique que ça ne défait pas le paysage non plus de cet endroit-là. Comme M. Bouchard a dit, si ce serait pas mieux du projet Morris, on aurait peut-être une autre discussion, mais moi je suis correct avec la recommandation de...
J'ai rencontré le monsieur, moi aussi, l'automne passé, durant la campagne électorale, puis il y avait un problème. Il y avait un problème avec son voisin. Puis, la manière que c'est fait, c'est en arrière du poteau électrique.
Non, je pense pas que j'ai un problème avec l'esprit du règlement.
Je comprends ce que vous dites.
Sauf qu'il y a un principe qu'on essaie de régler un conflit entre des voisins en modifiant un règlement. C'est la seule, puis je suis d'accord là, qu'on peut le faire. C'est juste que la personne au village Maurice va pouvoir nous revenir et dire, ben, vous l'avez fait pour lui, pourquoi vous ne le faites pas pour moi?
Ben, je vais expliquer mon opinion sur
Je
ça.
vais juste dire qu'on
Mais
va
ça
peut-être avoir
commence, ça commence à parler d'esprit de règlement, là, on n'a pas fini, là, parce que ça veut dire que c'est une interprétation, on peut aller n'importe où là, en interprétant. Alors, moi, je pense qu'il faut aller avec le règlement. Le règlement dit ça. Les risques qu'il y ait d'autres chicanes de voisins sont énormes, c'est très élevé, les maisons sont tellement rapprochées. Alors, c'est évident que si on crée ce précédent-là, constamment, on va avoir des demandes par la suite. Puis on va avoir de plus en plus de difficultés à vraiment faire respecter le règlement en place.
Fait que je vous demande qui est en faveur de la résolution, de la recommandation qu'on a ici. 5. OK. C'est passé. Mr. Darch. Oh, what the favorite.
On peut passer, monsieur.
9.4, excusez.
Oui.
Organisateur de spectacle, monsieur de.
You're on hold, Mr. Darch.
Sorry. Sit back a little bit. I know you're anxious to tell us about this, but you'll have to wait a few minutes more. Allez-y, monsieur Wood. Oh, excusez. Allez-y.
Attendu que le conseil municipal a mandaté les services communautaires d'évaluer la possibilité que la cité de Clarence-Rockland devienne le diffuseur d'une programmation annuelle de spectacles variés à la salle de spectacle Optimist à Rockland, et attendu que les services communautaires n'ont pas les ressources en place pour gérer une programmation annuelle, que le comité plénière recommande que le conseil municipal autorise les services communautaires de solliciter des propositions pour la gestion d'une programmation annuelle à la salle de spectacle Optimist, et que le comité plénière recommande que le conseil municipal autorise les services communautaires de conclure un accord de service si la proposition est convenable et n'entraîne aucun coût net pour la cité tel que recommandé.
Secondé. Suzanne. Question. Suivant.
Je trouve l'idée super, je pense que c'est venu de M. Bouchard.
Ouais.
Quand on parle de coût net, ça veut dire qu'on pourrait avoir une suggestion qu'on avance des fonds et qu'à la fin, il y a une récupération?
C'est justement ça.
OK.
Lors du processus budgétaire, il y avait eu 25 000 $, 50 000 en dépenses et le même montant en revenus.
On prend quand même un risque.
C'est ça,
mais c'est un risque. Je ne sais pas si tu connais un peu plus comment ça fonctionne. Excuse.
Non, c'est...
Ben, au temps du budget, c'est là que je vous l'avais présenté, j'avais envoyé la documentation à tout le monde, et puis ce qui est... il y a deux choses dedans, puis j'aime beaucoup le rapport de la façon que ça a été écrit. Il y a un premier besoin dans la communauté, la communauté mentionne qu'on a payé des grandes taxes pour une salle de spectacle, puis qu'on n'a pas encore une programmation qui pourrait aller matcher avec la salle telle qu'elle. Puis que nous, on n'a pas les ressources pour le faire. Cette situation-ci permet de le faire. Puis je pense qu'un des diffuseurs qui serait intéressé de travailler avec nous, puis il peut en avoir d'autres également, quand on regarde son calcul financier en termes du risque qui est réellement pris, c'est pas des spectacles où ce que ton break-even est à 90% de salle compte non plus. C'est des chiffres qui sont beaucoup plus réservés avec ces objectifs-là, parce que je pense que c'est ce que la ville de Gatineau fait présentement, donc, alors dans différentes salles de spectacle, eux aussi, en termes de réduire des coûts. Le MIFO, c'est eux autres mêmes, le font eux autres mêmes, tel quel. Et en même temps, la personne qui nous a préparé ce rapport-là, c'est l'ancien directeur artistique du MIFO qui a travaillé dans un contexte budgétaire où ce que faire des pertes budgétaires, c'est pour un organisme à but non lucratif, ça se fait pas. Donc, je pense que la personne très confiante du produit, comprend très bien la position de la municipalité et veut s'engager dans quelque chose qui va être à long terme en termes de bâtir la communauté. C'est pas ici pour un coup d'argent, c'est vraiment... Puis nous, ici, on n'est pas là non plus pour un coup d'argent parce que la municipalité pourrait faire un profit avec la situation. Je pense pas que l'objectif est au profit. L'objectif est vraiment de mettre davantage Clarence-Rockland sur la carte puis être un peu moins la communauté dormante, offrir des spectacles ici, laisser les gens aller souper un peu avant, engager une couple de gardiennes de plus aussi en même temps, puis laisser les papas et les mamans sortir, aller voir un spectacle.
Promouvoir la
Ben,
culture.
c'est le papa qui dort le moins présentement.
Promouvoir la culture. Hein, promouvoir la culture aussi.
Mais on veut promouvoir la culture, autant francophone qu'anglophone. On est capable d'aller chercher les deux côtés ici. Puis je pense qu'il y a un très grand potentiel. Puis éventuellement, il y aurait, on commence avec un petit contrat, je pense, ce qui est proposé, mais il y aurait un contexte de pouvoir voir plus grand avec le Festival de la Rivière, avoir un contrat qui inclut le Festival de la Rivière.
Mais est-ce que cette personne-là a vu la salle? Parce que c'est
Oui,
pas une
absolument.
salle, c'est une salle prévue pour des
connaît très
écoles.
bien,
C'est pas une
l'endroit.
salle professionnelle.
Non, il connaît très bien l'endroit, mais en même temps, demander à des artistes de décrire les types de salles dans lesquelles ils ont déjà performé
Oui,
dedans.
Je pense pas tout de suite le Festival de la Rivière devrait être laissé de côté. Là,
Bon, pour cette année, c'est pas ça, là, mais on parle, on dit, il y a un potentiel à long terme qui est très, très fort en termes de faire voir davantage. Tu sais, le Centre des Arts Shankman, ça a pris un peu de temps, mais là, les gens, ils savent, puis il y a des gros spectacles qui vont là. Les gens, ils partent de Gatineau pour aller voir aussi.
Mais est-ce que la ville d'Ottawa a subventionné la salle Shankman ou ça a été fait au niveau privé?
Lorsque les spectacles sont faits par le MIFO, alors le MIFO est un opérateur à l'intérieur de là. Alors lui-même il a son contrat de location, etc.
C'est ma seule crainte, c'est qu'on avance des fonds publics, puis j'aime super l'idée. Je me dis, si c'est un si petit montant que ça, pourquoi la compagnie ne l'investit pas au début? Mais je comprends que si on ne risque rien, on n'aura rien aussi. Mais je veux juste amener l'attention qu'il y a quand même un risque. Il est peut-être faible, puis je comprends M. Bouchard. L'idée est excellente, mais c'est quand même des fonds publics qu'on va mettre et qu'il y a quand même un risque. C'est juste ça que je veux amener.
Oui, je pense que, comme M. Grimard, c'est sûr, ces gens-là, c'est une business. Je pense qu'ils ont calculé le risque. Ça demeure toujours un risque, je comprends, mais c'est une business, ces gens-là. Fait que, est-ce qu'on veut absolument cette compagnie-là ou on a une autre, où on va ouvrir ça pour tous les impresarios?
Madame Golder.
Just wanted to clarify that this report specifically is saying that we will go out to tender,
Okay.
so that it will be open to the market for everybody to bid and put a proposal forward to the municipality.
That's
So it
what I
wouldn't
wanted to know.
specifically be one.
M. Simard.
C'est pas un risque pour la compagnie, c'est un risque pour nous autres.
C'est ça.
La compagnie n'a aucun risque.
Aucun risque.
Rien à mettre.
Ben, ça, c'est qu'est-ce qu'on a proposé.
Sure, oui,
Ça peut
Toujours
changer,
possibilité
ça.
d'inclure dans l'entente.
Ben oui.
C'est ça que j'allais dire.
C'est certain que
Moi,
s'ils
partager
disent,
le risque.
oui, s'ils disent on a besoin de vos sous, mais on vous donne des garanties, j'ai aucun problème. Mais de dire que, puis je sais que le risque est faible, le plan était très, il semblait solide, mais j'ai aussi appris que des fois, il y a plein de choses qui peuvent arriver, puis des choses qu'on ne contrôle pas.
Si on partage
Mais si par-
Madame Chagnon.
C'est ça, s'ils partagent le risque, mais ils ont un incitatif à s'assurer qu'ils vont vendre le spectacle. Puis aussi, si jamais c'était pas rentable, qu'il n'y avait pas assez de billets vendus, il y a toujours moyen d'annuler le spectacle. Ça se fait à Gatineau. J'en ai vu des spectacles qui ont été annulés, puis ça se fait ailleurs. S'ils s'aperçoivent qu'ils sont vraiment là, qu'ils n'arriveront pas avec le minimum qu'ils doivent pour rentrer dans leur argent.
M. Simard.
Parce que là, on s'en va au tender, ça ne veut pas dire que c'est ce qu'il nous a présenté qui va gagner le tender.
C'est ça.
Sinon, on peut se faire.
Oui, mais on peut décider de ne pas accepter et d'arrêter le processus.
C'est ça aussi. Juste un dernier point que je voudrais faire. Faut pas oublier aussi, dans un esprit de service communautaire, il y a un certain concept d'offrir une certaine qualité de vie puis d'avoir une vision sur le type de municipalité, ce qu'on veut être aussi en même temps. On s'entend que côté de nos arénas, puis ce qu'on a avec le YMCA, puis tout ça, on subventionne avec plusieurs milliers de dollars à chaque année parce qu'on veut être capable d'offrir quelque chose. Ici, je vais vous dire honnêtement, là, si disons qu'on aurait vraiment des mauvaises chances puis que les choses arriveraient vraiment mal, que tu aurais un déficit, disons, de 7 000 ou 8 000 mais tu aurais offert 4 spectacles de qualité pour le coût, puis pour le développement économique, le roulement qui est roulé. Puis n'oublie pas, on parle aussi en termes de, si le Club Optimiste est intéressé à avoir, disons, le co-check, etc., il y a des retours directement qui vont aller à ces organismes-là, eux aussi, pour les aider. Fait qu'il y a un roulement qui vient avec ça, il y a une certaine qualité de vie, une vision qu'on veut peut-être avoir pour le type de ville qu'on veut être. Puis le coût, même s'il y aurait une perte, je vais vous dire, là, que tu es en bas de 10 000 pour offrir tout ça, puis stimuler l'économie.
Que ça ne soit pas juste à l'esport.
Monsieur Bouchard. Boucher.
Il y a une chance aussi, M. le maire, mais qu'on aille chercher les oppositions de service, que vraiment, eux, avant qu'ils mettent un programme en place puis qu'ils engagent des fournisseurs de produits, que ça se peut qu'il n'y ait rien que d'eux qui peut livrer cette année. T'sais, si on les engage rien qu'à partir du mois de juin, mais lui, il doit travailler sur sa programmation, etc. à partir de cette date-là. Je suis certain qu'il ne voudra pas en mettre un par mois, septembre, octobre, novembre, décembre. Je doute si oui, c'est vraiment agressif pour finir l'année de même. Ça que, il y a tous ces détails-là qu'on n'a pas comme c'est là parce qu'on n'a pas approché personne.
M. Irwin, avez-vous quelque chose à ajouter?
Je pense pas, M. le maire.
Fini, question? Merci beaucoup.
Alors, est-ce qu'on vote pour ça?
Non, c'est la ligne.
C'était au plénière.
Juste. OK.
C'est accepté. Tout le monde en faveur? Bon, merci. Mr. Darts, now we're ready. Monsieur Simard, vous avez la résolution des temps corrects?
Attendu que le personnel s'est engagé à présenter de nouveau un rapport au ministère de l'Environnement et de la Conservation des parcs au début mars 2019, et attendu que la Cité et son consultant WSP ont entrepris des études et des analyses supplémentaires afin de répondre aux préoccupations et aux exigences exprimées par le MECP dans la lettre du 15 août 2018, et entendu que la Cité est maintenant en mesure de transmettre le nouveau rapport au MECP, que le rapport INF 2019-012 soit reçu à titre d'information.
Secondé. M. Cardani. Question pour M. Darts? M. Grimard?
I'm going to use English, but I read the report and I put my question in French. I know that in the agreement, or what we want to propose to the ministry, we are agreeing to put an extra layer of on top of the old Notre Dame dump, I assume, to prevent anything from leaking or to. Is it possible to do tests before to see if right now everything is holding to prevent that cost?
Yeah, certainly to answer that question. If it's suitable, we would certainly do tests to use as much of what is there as possible. That capping layer is critical to the acceptance ultimately by the ministry, because their biggest concern, and it's I guess it's itemized in their August 15th letter, is that their biggest concern is that they don't want surface waters migrating into the landfill material or into the leachate. So we have to prevent that migration.
But if for the past 30 years nothing has gone in,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But I know they're really
But
firm on that too.
I told them we would design it, and that we would give them a design that has a certain impermeability factor. I'm not necessarily technical and all that stuff, but anyway, we'll make sure that it doesn't go from the surface through the layer into the landfill materials. If that material that's there is suitable, and perhaps, let's say it's not suitable as the impervious layer. There's two layers there, right? There's a 600 millimeter layer and there's a 150. If it's not suitable for the 600, it might be stripped away, put in your impermeable layer, and then use it as your vegetation layer, if I can call it that. But we'll try to optimize whatever we can.
Because we're cutting down costs if we do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the report indicates the sort of the budget levels. It's close. Okay. We're close to the line with the estimates we've got. Now they're at what I refer to as a Class D level, which is really just based, there isn't any design consideration, it's more concept plans and the like. But as you go into detailed design, your costs will get refined. But right now, I can say for both the stormwater management and for the landfill closure plan, it looks like the funding is adequate. The fortunate part, I think, and it speaks to the timing of this, I know there are those that would like to see this constructed very, very quickly here. It's not going to happen. I think I indicated in the report, the ministry's own internal review procedures are going to control. So just the submission of this document, which I believe is a significant milestone in the delivery of these projects, it's going to take at least 5 months for them to review that. They are probably going to be coming back to us with questions, clarifications, and just want to pause on that one for a minute. I only want to entertain clarifications and questions on the preferred solution. I do not want them going into all the options we considered, which are detailed in the report. We'll be forever and a day, so I'm going to talk to their people and say, we'll entertain questions in that, but on the preferred solution. But it's going to take a good 5 months for that. And then you're going to have to go and retain a consultant to do the design work. And then once the design is done, then you have to apply for an environmental certificate of approval, ECA. Historically, they take about 8 months. Now, I guess what I'm hoping, I know, what I'm hoping is the review process that we get into on the front end, going through this report, will shorten that other. So I think optimistically, if let's say the middle of 2020, we're into tendering and construction, that would be good.
Okay, thank you.
Let's not forget, we got an order to fix that, so we got no choice.
They're holding it up.
It
His options
slows
are very
down,
good.
well, you know. Autre question, Monsieur Lalonde?
I mean, for us at this point, once we've delivered the report to them, the ball's in their court. We're in no rush to do this thing, because it's all debt anyways.
Well, once it's all approved, you gotta get it done before they change the
No, but I
money.
mean, if they take a year to review everything and approve everything, and then, you know, until, I mean, it's.
Give me
True to a point. My only concern would be the longer things move out there,
Yeah.
you know, yourselves and other projects, costs can start to increase. I think it's in our interest to move this along. I mean, this file has been around a long, long time. And I'm hoping, I guess I'm optimistic, is that we're starting to bring it to a conclusion. But I would like to fast track it as much as possible, but I don't think fast tracking is going to mean construction this year.
Other questions? Tout le monde en faveur? Merci. Protocole d'entente pour le projet de fourniture d'eau avec la municipalité de la Nation. Tu le vert?
Attendu que Vice and Hunter, LLP, ont été retenus par la Cité pour réviser les termes et conditions du protocole d'entente et que les révisions ont été effectuées en conséquence, et attendu que le protocole d'entente a été négocié à la satisfaction du directeur de l'infrastructure et de l'aménagement du territoire, que le comité plénière recommande que le Conseil adopte un règlement afin d'autoriser le maire et la greffière à signer un protocole d'entente avec la municipalité de la Nation pour la fourniture d'eau potable à Limoges.
Secondé. M. Bouchard, question? Tout le monde en faveur? Oh. Oui.
On va juste faire ça juste de même, non, je pense pas.
J'ai demandé, M. Lalonde. C'est pas de ma faute si vous ne levez pas votre main. J'ai bien regardé sur votre bord.
David, ça switch, M. Lalonde. Moi, je veux juste m'assurer, M. Lalonde, qu'on a déjà discuté notre discussion aujourd'hui là-dessus, mais je veux juste faire certain que les pourcentages qui ont été établis sont spécifiquement pour notre répartition des coûts pour la construction et pour le maintien de ces infrastructures-là, spécifiquement au sud de la cité, représente bien le pourcentage qu'on devrait faire face, étant donné que on s'entend que la grosse majorité de l'eau et puis du bénéfice, si tu veux, est envers la nation et non pas vers la cité de Clarence Rock. Je vais juste m'assurer avec vous que vous êtes confortable justement que ces chiffres-là, qu'on peut se fier dessus à 100%. Ça, c'est le premier point, mais je vais vous laisser répondre.
Allez-y, monsieur.
OK, parfait.
Monsieur le maire, ouais, donc dans le fond, je peux vous donner un exemple très concret. Là, si on regarde dans le MOU, dans le tableau là, avec la distribution des coûts, on parle la ligne entre la booster station de Caron, qui est présentement là, une booster station qu'on occupe, on opère, et la ligne qui se rend à Bouvier. Les répartitions de coûts sont 38% pour la ville de Rockland, puis 62% pour la nation. En ce moment, on a déjà cette section-là, on est déjà en train d'entretenir, on est déjà en train de l'opérer. Si elle brise, la nation va payer 62% des coûts de ça. En ce moment, si elle brise sans cette entente-là, nous payons 100% des coûts. Donc, il y a un grand avantage à avoir une entente avec la nation à cet égard-là. Donc, toute l'infrastructure sud de Rockland, vraiment, on finit par avoir un partenaire dans le fond pour payer la majorité des coûts d'entretien, de remplacement. Donc, Puis c'est basé sur justement, pour être équitable, c'est basé sur la consommation. Donc, on prend en compte que la consommation qui passe au sud de Rockland est principalement pour la nation. Donc, c'est eux qui sont principalement responsables de ces coûts-là. C'est pour ça que tu vois une répartition de 62%. Puis même, c'est pas bien loin, c'est à partir de Caron à la tour d'eau sur Ville. On parle de quasiment juste à la sortie de la limite de Rockland, c'est eux qui sont principalement responsables à 62% des coûts. Donc, qui est un avantage assez significatif à ce niveau-là.
Qui va déterminer, est-ce que c'est la nation qui va déterminer quel taux qu'ils vont charger à leurs citoyens qui vont utiliser l'eau, ou si c'est, nous autres, on leur charge pour la masse, pour la quantité totale d'eau qu'ils utilisent, puis ensuite, eux autres, ils peuvent charger le montant qu'ils veulent à leurs citoyens?
Donc, M. le maire, la façon que l'entente serait organisée, c'est que nous, on en charge de l'eau, un coût un bulk rate, un coût de consommation, à la ligne de propriété. Donc, eux autres, ils consomment un certain montant d'eau. Qu'est-ce qu'ils font avec après, puis la façon qu'ils le vendent à leurs résidents, c'est entièrement dans leur responsabilité, dans leurs mains. Par contre, je peux juste dire qu'ils ont tellement ils doivent tellement investir, un investissement significatif dans le capital pour pouvoir avoir l'eau, que l'eau qu'ils vont vendre à leurs résidents, le taux doit être élevé en conséquence. Bien, pas élevé, mais doit refléter leur investissement. Donc avoir un taux d'eau pour essayer de récupérer les coûts capital, les coûts de développement, toutes ces choses-là.
Puis on n'a pas à entretenir leur section, puis dépasser à partir de la limite de la nation, la limite de la fin de Hammond, parce que ici, Hammond Cheney, la fin de Cheney, à partir de là, c'est leur responsabilité si les tuyaux brisent ou si la main brise ou quoi que ce soit.
Sur leur propriété, c'est leur responsabilité. À l'intérieur de notre propriété, si tu veux, pour simplifier, à l'intérieur de notre propriété, c'est selon la répartition qui est entière. Bien, le plus proche que tu vas de Rockland, le plus que le coût il est élevé pour nous, parce que l'eau, elle est produite et consommée dans notre municipalité. Le plus tu es loin de Rockland, le plus que le pourcentage est élevé pour la nation, parce que l'eau est produite et consommée pour la nation.
Faut oublier, ils n'ont pas été chercher d'octroi. Ça va leur faire un coût capital assez haut. Monsieur Levert.
Pas le choix, c'est de grossir.
Je pense que le projet en même, si on regarde ça, c'est bien. Je suis en faveur de ça. Par contre, il faut regarder aussi le 2,5 millions qui vont être qui vont nous donner. Excusez. Ça va tourner dans les réserves pour l'eau. On a déjà commencé à avoir des courriels des gens dans le quartier 7 surtout, comme Indian Creek North, ainsi que plus loin Canaan, où l'eau est vraiment, ils n'ont pas de la bonne eau. Et puis même, ils ont fait des demandes pour détacher des lots. Ils n'ont pas été acceptés parce qu'il n'y a pas d'eau. L'eau est vraiment pas potable. Fait que les gens voient ça quand ils lisent les rapports, puis ils disent, mais là, on va vendre l'eau ailleurs, mais on n'est pas capable de nous fournir, nous.
Est-ce qu'on n'est pas capable de les fournir en même temps quand le tuyau passe, si le tuyau s'en va à Limoges?
Mais on parle, oui, je comprends ceux qui sont sur le chemin Russell jusqu'à Indian Creek, oui, mais au nord d'Indian Creek, là, c'est Indian Creek pareil, c'est pavé, vous vous rappelez?
Ah oui, je me rappelle.
Mais là, ces gens-là commencent à vraiment crier, c'est quoi l'affaire, là? On va vendre l'eau ailleurs, puis on va installer des tuyaux, mais nous autres, on ne nous fournit pas l'eau. Ouais. Je comprends que c'est dans 20 ans, ça va être tout payé, ça, avec ce qu'ils vont nous payer par année, mais quand même, il faut penser à nos idées.
Il faut penser aussi au budget.
Oui.
Monsieur Zant.
Monsieur Lenhart, dans la partie numéro 6, dans cette consultation, je trouve ça intéressant que the department has consulted with our water and wastewater operators, Aqua, regarding operational costs and impacts. And what did they say? I also want to know what their thoughts are. I understand you're going to consult with them, but I mean, they must have some comments on whether this is good or not.
Le but de notre consultation avec eux, c'était de voir si ça se faisait d'un point de vue d'opération. Donc, la conclusion est que oui. Sinon, on n'aurait pas avancé ou continué là, dans cette démarche-là. Mais ils ont aussi regardé, on a demandé c'était quoi les coûts d'opération additionnels pour pouvoir fournir de l'eau à la nation. Puis, on était capable d'identifier qu'en réalité, le coût fixe, qui est comme les employés et des choses de ce genre-là, il va y avoir très peu ou il n'y aura pas de différence à ce niveau-là. Par contre, les coûts d'opérations variables comme les chimiques et toutes ces choses-là pour gérer tout, avoir un petit peu plus de coûts associés à ça. Par contre, le 1,28 que nous avons chargé la nation couvre au-delà de n'importe quelle considération opérationnelle.
Now, I know how councils work. At any point in time, another council could come in 8 years and go in Nation and say, I'm not paying this. So what is exactly, where does that lead us? Because we can't say it won't happen because it's a very good possibility, especially with the amount of...
It could be from our end as well.
Yeah, and it could be from our end as well. But most likely them, because they're going to be paying a...
Mr. Leonard.
Yeah, but I just wanted to get my question answered.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, in regards to that, there's actually going to be a formal agreement that's going to be formed after the MOU, if the MOU is approved and signed. And in that agreement, you'd identify the term of this agreement, and there's also a committee that's going to be formed. So once the committee is formed, which is going to be comprised of staff on both municipalities plus members of council on both municipalities, once that's done, it kind of acts like a committee of the whole, where recommendations would be done through that committee and then would be brought to respective councils. So you'd always have this continued buy-in from both councils. You could always, I guess you could always end up with...
I'm just worried about the price tag if one of them decides to get it, especially them. I'm not going to worry about us, but if they just say we're out, how does that affect the taxpayers?
It's not something that you could get out of, because once you've connected, you bought into the system. Like you can't decide to shut off the tap. And they've also agreed to purchase a minimum of 350 cubic meters per day, regardless of development. Like that is something that we were able to negotiate based on the feedback that we received from council. So it means if they don't develop one bit, and even if we don't develop one bit, we still end up with $164,000 annually of revenue based on this agreement. So worst case, we get $2.6 million right as soon as they connect, plus $164,000 annually just for connecting.
Okay, you know this stuff is going to come out. I mean, I don't say nothing's impossible.
And as a comfort, they've given a lot of consideration to their options for where to get water for their ratepayers. We're not talking about a water park or a splash pad. We're talking about actual water that people need to live. So, if they wanted to change their mind and go with one of the other options, the cost is double, right? This is still the best cost-efficient, most secure route for them to provide safe drinking water and adequate volume of drinking water to their ratepayers.
Not only that, if you look, they'll probably borrow money for this capital project, and it's probably be for 30 years anyway. You don't want that whole thing shut down and not doing nothing after you've paid all this money.
No, but you know how things work.
Yeah, I know.
Mm-hmm. That's a valid question.
Monsieur Lano?
One of the things that, when people read that report, from our residents, they're going to see that we're charging them less than we are charging our own residents for water. So that's one thing we need to address. And then the other thing as well, from the development community, they're going to see this as, or they could see this as, we're advancing our own schedule to benefit another municipality, therefore charging us more development charges down the road quicker than perhaps anticipated. So I just want to make sure that we address those 2 points.
Mr. Mayor, those are fair comments and questions. So in terms of the rate, the reason why it would seem like if we may be charging a different rate is that in our rate structure we have a fixed and variable rate, and the majority of the capital investments that we make in our network are covered through the fixed rates, and some of them do find themselves on the variable rate though. And what happens is that it really wouldn't be fair to the nation if we're replacing a water main, let's say in Moore's Village, for them to pay the capital cost of that through the bulk rate that we're charging them, because there is no direct benefit to them from that capital investment. So the bulk rate that we're charging them is is the operational cost to produce and to supply water to them, plus what we consider a revenue or a revenue for that service that we're providing. So that's why that rate is at 1.28, and it's subject for review annually based on the operation cost increases by our provider, based on the committee that is formed and whether or not they see fit to increase that rate. So we're not tied to this 1.28 eternally. It's just a starting point.
And the development community?
Yeah, and so the development community, really what you end up getting is that, if anything, you're going to end up having a benefit to either our rates for our residents and the development community, because we're getting an injunction of $15 million into our network that we wouldn't otherwise get. And so you'd still have to pay for these costs, right? Because these are all projects that we would need to support our own growth and our own development. So you'd have your development community through the DCs having to support the majority of these costs. Now we're getting a partner that's paying 60% of these costs, actually. So it's a benefit to our development community, it's a benefit to our residents, because the fee rates would go up higher if this partnership wouldn't occur.
If Nation wants to grow, they need their water. They don't have anywhere else to go. They have to take us, or it's going to cost them, like he said, double the price. So this is pretty much a no-brainer from what I can see.
And it's arrangements that are done. Amberg is getting water from Ottawa, Vancouver is getting water from Hawkesbury. So it's something that's common. Yes.
I know that the mayor of the nation of the march, they mentioned that if they didn't have the water, their development was almost at their halt. So they need the water, so they're going to pay the price. They have to, and they have the sewers and the water. They have both services, so it's going to bloom very quickly, and it's close to the highway. So we just need to do the same thing here. Have the water and the sewers in Bourget to compete with Limoges. And Karen speaks to it. No, it's true. You need both services, and you would see
talking
it's
about
gonna,
water here too, Limoges.
No, but they're going to use the water. You're going to pay for the water because they need to develop. And the mayor mentioned it many times.
Okay. Autre question? OK. Tout le monde en faveur? Merci. Partenariat avec Ontario 2011 pour les communications d'urgence, 4 mars. M. Grimard?
Certainement. Que le comité plénière recommande au Conseil de signer l'entente avec le Community Information Center of Ottawa /211 Eastern Region, CICO /211 Eastern Region, afin de formaliser l'accord et les renseignements véhiculés aux fins d'information à être partagés avec le public.
Secondaire. M. Zan, question. M. Lalonde.
Je suis content de voir ça arriver. Je me souviens que quand on avait eu le debriefing par Chef Wilson puis Mme Collier, on avait parlé d'un potentiel partnership avec Ontario 2011 à ce temps-là. Donc, je suis content de voir que c'est finalement fait.
Autre question, commentaire? Tout le monde en faveur? Merci. Statistiques mensuelles du service de la protection, M. Bouchard.
Que le rapport numéro PRO 2019-008 au sujet des statistiques mensuelles soit reçu à titre d'information.
Secondé. M. Simard, question? Tout le monde en faveur? Merci. Autre item? Avez-vous quelque chose à demander au directeur? Mme Choignard?
Non.
M. Grimard?
Non.
M. Zan?
Question, M. Lenhart. They're predicting a fast melt at some point through the spring. Are we ready with, like, as far as the basins being unclogged and ready to take it all in? Because the last little melt we had last week, my phone didn't stop ringing, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, we try to be as proactive as possible with the rest of that. And there are some problem areas that we're aware of that we routinely inspect and open it up as much as we can. And so in regards to flooding, we're okay.
So obviously the more the downtown core, there's a lot of
catch basins
that are like pretty much covered up with ice. So.
Yeah, we removed the snowbanks, and so we're in a better position to be able to open those up and to allow water to flow in the catch basins.
I think second question is, are the smaller streets going to have one last, I guess, removal of snowbanks? There's some that are like down to
Aren't they done?
Yeah, so we have another snowbank removal that's planned. We're waiting a little bit to see if there's additional snow that's going to happen to try to minimize the cost as much as possible. But we do have a snow.
I'm thinking of Notre Dame, like where there's one lane, so people are like going into parking lots or climbing up on top of the snowbank to be able to get around. So, thanks. That's it.
Non, Michel?
Oui, je suis content de voir que la municipalité elle commence à être vraiment éclairée. Elle a presque fini de poser des lumières. Ça commence à vraiment paraître comme c'est.
Il reste 200 lumières en ce moment.
200 lumières?
Sur 1200 ou 1300 à peu près, il reste 200
Excellent.
lumières. Donc,
Comme je l'ai dit à Joe le matin, c'est un projet qui coûte 580 000. Dans 4 ans, il va être payé. En
Après
plus,
ça, on va travailler, c'est sûr.
après ça, les
Vous voulez
lumières
dire
sont
là-dedans?
garanties pour 10 ans.
Ça va prendre. Riez pas de moi, c'est vrai, ça prend ça.
Je trouve ça
Ça va
bien.
prendre des échos.
Avez-vous fini, vous deux, là? Non.
Ça lance.
Et, fait que, il y a après 4 ans, on va sauver 119 000, je pense qu'on disait. Ça va être dans nos poches, fait que ça va être quelque chose de bien. Monsieur Simard?
Juste à remercier pour le revised standing sur le baseline, puis il est arrivé quelqu'un de l'enlever sur les résidents sont pas remerciés.
C'est bon? Non? C'est bon? Ajournement, 9h24.
Thank you, Dave, for making it.